There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes the walls around her are too small for who she's becoming. You can feel it deep in your spirit. That silent stretching, that quiet frustration, that sense that you don't fit where you used to belong. The conversations that once entertained you now drain you. The patterns that once defined you now suffocate you. The woman you're becoming has outgrown the cage you were once comfortable in. Maybe your cage isn't made of iron. Maybe it's built out of opinions, expectations, and fear. Maybe it's that voice that says, "You can't do better," or "Who do you think you are?" Maybe it's the comfort of familiarity. Staying small because being seen feels too risky. But let me tell you this, the woman you're becoming was never created to be confined. You can't grow wings and then complain about the wind. The cage feels uncomfortable now because God is calling you to fly. You've spent years dimming your light so others could feel comfortable in their shadows. You've edited your dreams so they wouldn't look too big. You've apologized for being too passionate, too emotional, too ambitious, but the truth is you were never too much. You were just surrounded by people who couldn't handle enough. The woman you're becoming doesn't apologize for her fire. She learns how to use it. You see, every cage comes with a story. Maybe it's the cage of shame. That thing you did, that mistake you made, that label you were given. You've replayed it in your head 1,000 times, letting it convince you that freedom isn't for people like you. But the woman you're becoming knows that what you did is not who you are. The cage of shame cannot hold the woman who has decided to forgive herself. Or maybe your cage is comfort. It's the place that feels safe but stagnant. The relationship that looks good but steals your peace. The job that pays well but kills your purpose. The routine that keeps you existing but not living. The woman you're becoming knows she can't stay there because growth will always ask for movement. Healing will always demand release. And purpose will always pull you out of what no longer serves you. It's not easy leaving the cage. You'll second guess yourself. You'll want to turn back when you realize freedom isn't predictable. You'll miss the structure of your old limitations. But let me tell you, cages don't just keep you in. They keep the world out. The woman you're becoming carries a voice, a vision, a power that the world needs. You were not created to blend in. You were designed to break through. Sometimes God will let the cage become uncomfortable, so you finally decide to leave. He'll let that friendship fall apart, that door close, that season end, not because he's punishing you, but because he's positioning you. When the cage starts shaking, don't panic. That's not destruction. That's transition. That's God saying, you can't stay here anymore. You may not feel ready, but the woman you're becoming already exists inside you. She's been whispering through your intuition, through your restlessness, through that ache that says, there's more to me than this. She's the version of you who loves herself enough to say no, who walks away from what's toxic, even if it's familiar, who doesn't chase validation because she's finally rooted in her own worth. The woman you're becoming doesn't need everyone to understand her. She doesn't explain her process to people who were never meant to go with her. She knows that when God promotes you, not everyone gets a ticket to your next level. And that's okay. Growth requires separation. Destiny requires discipline. Freedom requires faith. So if you feel the walls closing in, if life feels too tight for who you're becoming, that's your sign. The cage is cracking. The old version of you served her purpose, but she can't go where you're headed. That version of you cannot breathe within the limits that used to define your worth. You can't pour your new spirit into old containers. The limits that were designed to keep you safe are now the very things keeping you small. The woman you're becoming understands that she doesn't need to prove herself to step outside the box. She just needs to remember who she is. You'll notice that the limits begin to fade the moment you stop agreeing with them. When you stop saying, this is all I can do, and start declaring, this is who I was made to be. When you stop rehearsing your pain and start releasing it. When you stop hiding your light to make others comfortable. The woman you're becoming isn't waiting for permission anymore. She's walking into rooms that her old self would have been too afraid to enter. She's setting boundaries that once made her feel guilty. She's unlearning patterns of survival so she can live from purpose. She's no longer defined by her mistakes, but by her resilience. It takes courage to outgrow your limits. It takes faith to believe that there's something greater beyond what you can see. It takes grace to forgive yourself for staying small for so long. The woman you're becoming isn't afraid of being misunderstood because she knows that authenticity always offends imitation. She's not intimidated by failure because she knows every loss taught her something about strength. She's not afraid of starting over because she knows her foundation is no longer built on fear but on freedom. And while others may question your change, while they whisper about how different you've become, know that difference is the evidence of destiny. You were not designed to repeat cycles. You were designed to break them. You were not meant to live inside someone else's idea of who you should be. The woman you're becoming can't fit into limits created by a version of you that didn't know her own power. Every time you try to return to those limits, you'll feel the resistance of your spirit saying, this doesn't fit anymore. That's the sound of evolution. That's the sound of growth. That's the sound of becoming. Comfort and fear are cages disguised as safety. They whisper softly, convincing you that staying where you are is better than risking what you don't know. They tell you that if you don't move, you won't fall. They promise you peace but deliver stagnation. Comfort feels warm at first, familiar and predictable, but after a while, that same warmth becomes suffocating. It starts to steal your hunger, your curiosity, your drive. You begin to mistake stillness for peace, when really it's your spirit losing its strength. Fear, on the other hand, stands guard at the edge of your potential. It watches every step you take and warns you not to go too far. It paints disaster where there is only destiny. It chains you to the known, making sure you never discover how much power was waiting for you in the unknown. It's easy to call comfort peace because comfort doesn't challenge you. It doesn't require sacrifice, vulnerability, or faith. You can live years in comfort and convince yourself that you're okay, when in truth, you've only learned to survive, not to thrive. Not to thrive. Comfort is the counterfeit version of rest. It soothes your fears but silences your growth. It gives you permission to stay hidden under excuses like I'm not ready yet, or maybe next time. You tell yourself that you're waiting on the right moment, but the truth is, the right moment rarely comes. Comfort will never let you feel ready because readiness is not the fruit of ease. It's the reward of courage. Fear works with comfort like a perfect partner. While comfort keeps you still, fear keeps small. It reminds you of every failure you've ever had and convinces you that your past predicts your future. It tells you that if you step out, you'll lose what little you have. It blinds you to the truth that staying where you are is already a loss. Fear doesn't need to destroy you to win. It only needs to distract you from trying. The woman you're becoming can't grow inside the cage of fear because fear will always make her question her worth, her ability, and her calling. It will whisper lies until she mistakes them for her own thoughts. The most dangerous thing about comfort and fear is how normal they can feel. You can dress them up in rationality and call them wisdom or patience. You can convince yourself that staying quiet is humility when really it's fear of rejection. You can say you're staying put until you will feel peace, but what you're really waiting for is a guarantee. Growth doesn't come with guarantees. Purpose doesn't come with certainty. The woman who wants to evolve must learn to move even when her hands are trembling, to speak even when her voice shakes, to step out before she can see the ground beneath her feet. There's a subtle kind of bondage that hides behind comfort. It keeps you close to what you've already conquered, never allowing you to see what's next. You stay in the same job because it's predictable, even though it doesn't fulfill you. You stay in relationships that no longer grow you because at least you're not alone. You hold on to old versions of yourself because they're familiar, even when they've stopped feeding your spirit. Every time you choose what's safe over what's sacred, you shrink a little more. You start to forget the sound of your own potential. But every now and then something within you stirs. You feel that pull, that holy discontent, that whispers that there's more. You start to feel uncomfortable in the very place that once felt easy. That discomfort is not punishment. It's invitation. It's life's way of letting you know that your season of safety has expired. It's the divine nudge pushing you out of the nest, reminding you that wings don't work in cages. Fear will try to convince you that stepping out means losing control, but maybe control was the very thing holding you back. Maybe the next version of you requires surrender more than strategy. It's not that comfort and fear are evil. They're just deceptive. They protect you in one season, but imprison you in the next. There was a time when you needed them. When the world felt too heavy and you needed stillness to heal, comfort gave you rest. When pain was raw and faith felt fragile, fear kept you cautious. But what once was a survival mechanism can become a limitation if you don't recognize when the season shifts. Healing demands rest, but purpose demands movement. And you cannot fulfill your calling by staying where you were only meant to recover. Growth begins the moment you start choosing courage over comfort. It's the moment you realize that fear's voice may never disappear, but it no longer deserves your obedience. The woman you're becoming learns to feel fear and move anyway. She stops waiting for the absence of fear and starts walking with faith louder than her doubt. She learns that comfort was never meant to be her destination, only a temporary pause before the next level. Every time you say yes to courage, you silence fear a little more. Every time you step outside of what feels easy, you break another link in the chain that's held you back. You start to find freedom in risk, peace in progress, and strength in surrender. Fear will still whisper, comfort will still call your name, but you'll recognize their voices now. You'll know that every time they show up, it's because you're getting close to something powerful. Comfort and fear never chase people who are standing still. They chase those who are moving toward purpose. There's a fire within you that can't breathe in the stale air of comfort. There's a destiny within you that fear can't coexist with. The woman you're becoming knows that courage doesn't mean she's fearless. It means she's faithful. She's willing to trust that something greater awaits her outside the walls of safety. She's ready to let go of what she can control and step into what she was created for. The cage may feel familiar, but it's time to open the door, because the life waiting for you won't fit inside the space you once called safe. It's the way you talk to yourself, the way you expect the worst, the way you cling to guilt or shame. You can't grow when your inner dialogue keeps pulling you back into who you used to be. You can't carry the identity of you into the promise of the new you. The woman you're becoming knows that healing means releasing. Releasing the need to prove, to please, to perform. Releasing the need to control outcomes that only God can orchestrate. Releasing the illusion that growth means getting everything right. Growth isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about becoming more aligned with your purpose and less attached to your past. Leaving behind what no longer serves you will cost you comfort, but it will reward you with clarity. It will test your courage because saying goodbye to what's known feels like stepping into darkness. But what if the darkness isn't danger? What if it's just the space where seeds grow? What if what feels like loss is actually making room for expansion? The woman you're becoming learns to trust that endings are not punishments, they're transitions, that every time something leaves, it creates space for something new to enter. That sometimes the very thing you're afraid to lose is the weight keeping you grounded when you were meant to rise. The beauty of growth is that it doesn't ask you to have it all figured out. It only asks you to be willing to move. It asks you to release your grip on what's comfortable long enough to grab hold of what's divine. It teaches you that surrender is not weakness, it's wisdom. Because growth doesn't always look like gaining more. Sometimes it looks like losing what you never needed. The woman you're becoming learns to trust the pruning process. She understands that when life starts cutting things away, it's not rejection, it's refinement. She learns to thank God for closed doors, just as much as open ones, because both are directions leading her closer to who she's meant to be. There's freedom in release. There's peace in letting go. Growth will always cost you something: time, comfort, control. But it will give you something far greater in return. It will give you vision. It will give you strength. It will give you alignment with your purpose. You cannot become the woman you're meant to be while holding on to what was only meant for your past. Growth is the process of becoming too powerful for what once held you. It's realizing that you've outgrown your limits, and it's time to step into your next level with open hands and a willing heart. Not everyone is meant to go with you to your next level. As you evolve, you begin to realize that growth always creates distance. The woman you're becoming cannot carry everyone who once walked with her. Some people were sent to help you discover who you were, but they are not equipped to handle who you're becoming. That realization can be painful, especially when your heart is loyal. But spiritual maturity teaches you that separation is not rejection, it's direction. God doesn't remove people from your life to hurt you. He does it to make room for what aligns with your destiny. You can't drag everyone into your next chapter because some relationships are attached to the version of you that no longer exists. It's natural to want to bring everyone along. You remember who was with you in the struggle, who understood your story, who stayed when others left. You want them to see your breakthrough, to witness what they prayed with you for. But not everyone who started with you is supposed to finish with you. Some people were meant to plant seeds, others to water, and a few to simply teach you lessons before their time expired. When you start elevating, it's not that you think you're better. It's that your purpose requires a different environment. Your spirit begins to crave peace over popularity, depth over attention, and alignment over attachment. You start realizing that proximity doesn't always mean purpose. As you climb higher, the air gets thinner. The altitude demands that you travel lighter. Emotional baggage, unhealthy attachments, and draining relationships can't breathe where you're going. The woman you're becoming learns to discern who is meant to grow with her and who is only meant to guide her to the gate. You'll know the difference by the fruit they bear. The ones meant to stay will celebrate your transformation, not compete with it. They'll challenge you with love, not shame. They'll speak life into your vision, not fear. But the ones who aren't meant to go will start showing discomfort when you shine. They'll misunderstand your boundaries as arrogance. They'll call your healing selfishness. They'll resist your change because your growth threatens their comfort. You'll feel the pull to shrink yourself to make others stay. You'll want to explain your process, defend your decisions, and prove that your elevation isn't rejection. But you can't convince people who are committed to misunderstanding you. The woman you're becoming learns to let silence speak for her. She doesn't chase after those who walk away because she knows that divine alignment doesn't need force. It flows. Every time you try to hold on to what's fading, you delay what's forming. Every time you prioritize keeping people comfortable over keeping your purpose intact, you trade destiny for approval. Not everyone can handle the weight of your calling. Some people loved you in your brokenness because your wounds didn't challenge their insecurity. They were comfortable with you needing them, but not with you leading yourself. When you start healing, your energy changes. Your standards rise, your prayers deepen. You begin to require more honesty, more peace, more purpose, and not everyone wants to rise with you. Some people only knew how to love the version of you that tolerated less. The woman you're becoming knows that love that requires you to shrink is not love. It's control. There's a loneliness that comes with growth, but it's sacred. It's the space where you meet yourself again, where you rediscover your own voice apart from the noise of everyone else's expectations. You start to realize that solitude isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's where clarity is born. It's where God speaks loudest because distractions have been silenced. When people start falling away, don't rush to fill the gaps. Let the space breathe. Let it teach you who you are when you're not performing for belonging. Let it remind you that divine connections are never lost. They're replaced with better alignment. Some of the people who leave weren't meant to hurt you. They were meant to show you how much you've outgrown certain energies. They were mirrors reflecting the lessons you needed to learn: boundaries, discernment, self-worth. When you start valuing peace, you'll notice that chaos starts leaving your life, and sometimes that chaos has a familiar face. The woman you're becoming learns to bless people as they go, without bitterness, without resentment. She understands that release is an act of faith. It's saying, even if you're not walking with me anymore, I still trust that God knows how to fill the empty spaces. It's not just people you'll have to leave behind. It's versions of yourself that they're attached to. The version that tolerated disrespect to avoid being alone. The version that hid her voice to keep the peace. The version that settled for less because she didn't know her worth. Those versions may have been necessary for survival, but they can't exist in your purpose. Every new level demands a new identity, a new mindset, a new circle. You can't expect transformation while surrounding yourself with people committed to your past. The woman you're becoming understands that sometimes love means loving from afar. You can still honor the memory without keeping the connection. Letting go will stretch your heart. It will make you question if you're being too cold or too distant. But growth requires boundaries, and boundaries are not walls. They're gates. They protect what you've prayed for. You spent too long healing to let anyone drag you back into what you've been delivered from. The woman you're becoming no longer entertains what disturbs her peace. She no longer negotiates her worth. She no longer explains why she's no longer available for dysfunction. She's learned that peace is not found in keeping everyone happy. It's found in keeping herself whole. There's power in understanding that not every goodbye is a loss. Some goodbyes are protection, some are redirection, and some are graduation. You've completed that lesson, you've outgrown that environment, you've evolved beyond that frequency. And as much as your heart wants to hold on, your destiny is calling you forward. You can't walk into your next level while dragging the weight of what was. You have to travel light, trusting that what's meant for you will meet you where you're going, not where you've been. The cage was never home. You were created to soar. For too long, you've mistaken confinement for belonging. You've convinced yourself that as long as you can manage within the walls, you're fine. You've adapted to the limits, decorated the prison, and called it peace. But the truth is, the woman you're becoming has been restless for a reason. Every time you've tried to settle, something deep inside you stirred. Every time you tried to quiet your spirit, your dreams grew loud. That's because you were never designed to live a life of confinement. You were born to expand, to create, to rise. The cage may have been a chapter, but it was never your destination. You've been trained to believe that survival is success. That if you can get through the day without falling apart, you're doing fine. But the woman you're becoming knows that surviving is not the same as living. You weren't made to simply get by. You were made to flourish. Yet flourishing requires freedom, and freedom requires courage. The cage is comfortable because it's predictable. You know its dimensions, its rules, its rhythms. But predictability is not peace. It's just the illusion of safety wrapped in the fear of change. Every time you convince yourself to stay, you teach your spirit to settle for less than what it was created for. The cage can take many forms. It can be a relationship where you keep silencing your truth just to keep the peace. It can be a job where you trade passion for stability. It can be a mindset that convinces you that you're not enough unless you're perfect. It can even be the fear of stepping into your purpose because you don't know what awaits you outside. The cage doesn't always look dark. Sometimes it's shiny. It looks like comfort, routine, or control. But no matter how beautiful it seems, it's still a prison if it keeps you from your purpose. The woman you're becoming knows that you can't live free while trying to please your fears. You've been told that leaving the cage means being reckless, that choosing yourself is selfish, that wanting more is ungrateful. But the truth is, staying small serves no one. You can't inspire anyone by pretending you're less than what you are. You can't lead others to freedom while living in your own captivity. The world needs your light, not your limitations. The woman you're becoming refuses to apologize for outgrowing what once fit her. She understands that when she rises, she gives others permission to rise too. Freedom is contagious, and someone is waiting for the courage they'll find by watching you step out first. You'll know it's time to leave the cage when your peace no longer fits inside it. When the things that used to satisfy you no longer do. When the opinions of others lose their power over you. When your prayers shift from asking for escape to asking for expansion. You'll start to feel a holy discomfort and ache that can't be numbed by distraction. That's the sign that your wings are ready. That's the signal that your spirit is done surviving and ready to soar. But you can't fly while clinging to what feels familiar. At some point, you'll have to stop waiting for the right moment and realize that the moment is now. Stepping out of the cage will test you. You'll face fear that disguises itself as wisdom. You'll hear the voices of doubt whisper that you're not ready. You'll wonder if you've made a mistake when the wind feels too strong. But the woman you're becoming knows that wings aren't meant to work in still air. You have to trust the turbulence. You have to believe that the same God who gave you the vision will give you the strength to fulfill it. Growth will never feel safe, but it will always be sacred. You can't have transformation without transition, and you can't have freedom without faith. There will be moments when you look back at the cage and miss the simplicity of it. You'll miss the control, the predictability, the comfort. But don't confuse nostalgia with belonging. You're not missing the cage. You're just missing the certainty it gave you. Freedom doesn't always feel comfortable, but it's always worth it. The woman you're becoming will learn to love the uncertainty because she's learned that faith lives there. She'll start to trust that every risk taken in purpose is better than a lifetime spent in fear. The cage taught you discipline, but the sky will teach you destiny. It's in the open air that you'll learn what your wings can really do. It's in the flight that you'll discover the strength that was waiting inside you all along. The cage was necessary for a season. It built your resilience. It sharpened your awareness. It prepared you for flight. But preparation was never meant to become a permanent place. You have to stop confusing seasons with sentences. The cage was never meant to define you, only to refine you. There will be those who don't understand why you left. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're ungrateful or proud. But that's because they've never felt the pull of destiny you felt. You can't expect people who've never flown to understand the courage it takes to leave the ground. Their misunderstanding is not your burden to carry. Your only responsibility is to honor what's been placed inside you. The woman you're becoming doesn't chase validation. She chases purpose. She doesn't need the world to agree with her calling because she knows the one who called her is greater than the crowd that doubts her. So now, as you stand at the edge of your cage, trembling with both fear and hope, remember this. You were made for more. You were made for light, for motion, for expansion. The cage may have kept you safe, but it also kept you silent. It may have felt familiar, but it was never home. Home is where your soul breathes freely, where your gifts stretch without resistance, where your faith finds flight. The woman you're becoming already has the wings. All that's left is for you to open them. The cage was never home, and the sky has been waiting for you all along. So step out, lift your head, and soar, because you were never meant to crawl when you were created to fly.